Episode number 253, How to Remove Distractions and Enhance Your Graphics for Worship with Alan Smith. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
This is the Making Sunday Happen podcast, where we help you transform the worship experiences at your church. From first impressions, worship, production, volunteers, teaching, all aspects of the worship experience we cover on this podcast. So welcome. Thanks so much for hanging out this week. This week's episode of our show is brought to you by Minnow. Minnow is an online subscription-based streaming media provider. It specializes in Christian programming for children. It is a great platform of content for your kids' worship experiences, as well as families in your church. They also have fantastic church-at-home virtual worship experiences for kids' worship. You can check them out today at gominno.com. That's GOMINNO.com, gominno.com. Well, today on the podcast, I welcome my friend Alan Smith. Alan is the communications arts pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Columbus, Georgia. I met Alan through his design conference, Design Revival. They had their first event last year. He's become a great friend of mine. And today we're going to talk about how to remove distractions and enhance your graphics for worship. So we want to not be a distraction. So what is a distraction when it comes to our graphics? And how do we remove those distractions so that people can engage with our message? That is the question of the day. That's what I'll be talking to Alan about. Also, we were planning on sharing my entire talk from Design Revival last year on how to enhance your screen visuals here on the podcast. But Alan had such great content that we wanted to keep all of it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to drop my entire talk from Design Revival, all of it in its entirety, on the show notes page for this episode at makingsundayhappen.com/253. makingsundayhappen.com/253. There you can see my entire workshop session from Design Revival last year. It's absolutely free right there on the show notes page. That's the only place you can get it. Show notes page for this episode. makingsundayhappen.com/253. Well, we'll jump right into some content and conversation with Alan Smith right after this.
It's Minnow Church at Home. Experience the always awesome love of Jesus. There's a new episode every week with worship time, Bible stories, off-screen activities, and more. Join us every Sunday on Minnow.
Hey guys, before we jump into my recent interview with Alan, I got to chat with him for a few minutes at last year's Design Revival event. It was held at the Springer Opera House in Columbus, Georgia. Really cool venue. So here's my chat with Alan from the Springer. Then we'll jump right to my recent interview with Alan on how to remove distractions and enhance your graphics for worship. Check this out. Hey guys, I'm here with Alan Smith. You're the creative arts pastor at Calvary Baptist Church here in Columbus, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So you are the lead guru at Design Revival. We connected a few months ago, and Steve Dirks from our team is here hanging out, and we've just had a blast this weekend with lots of different speakers and gotten a chance to hang out with people. So tell me how Design Revival came about for you.
The shortened version of it is it started with our efforts to try to put together media mission trips for our church. And as we began to do these mission trips, we started doing Saturday afternoons, Saturday workshops at associations or church planning network groups or things of this nature. And it became clear to us that there was a need within the church to understand how to use design well and how to use design to more effectively communicate the gospel. And so our creative team began to kind of think about that and figure out how we could impact the church in some way for design. And the idea of Design Revival came out. We started working on it in January of this year. And so this is our first one to try to help churches understand how to use compelling design to effectively communicate the gospel.
That's awesome, man. So tell me, you guys have had a great speaker lineup, workshop lineup. So tell me, for those who weren't able to come this year, tell us who you had speak and some of the sessions that were going on this weekend.
We had Mike Jones, who is the creative director at Aflac. We had Tim Newton, who is the executive creative director for Ramsey Solutions. Yep. We had Alicia Colon, who is a paper illustrator, photographer out of Savannah. She runs Thrice Studios, fantastic illustrator. What she does with paper is amazing. We had Daryl Pinnock. He's out of Atlanta. He is a graphic design and illustrator and brand guy who really is fantastic helping churches understand what to do. And we had Phil Battle, who was... I think the thing that kind of helped connect communications and design for our conference this year. And he did a great job with it. So we had a good group.
So tell me who Design Revival is for. We serve a lot of people who connect to the worship experience. Yeah. So tell me your target audience for this.
So what we're trying to do is provide a place where people who aren't necessarily designers, who are in the church, who have been like tapped, hey, youth pastor, you're now the design guy. Right. Or hey, secretary, you now have to handle all our web stuff or whatever. You kind of get tapped with this job at the church, but you aren't necessarily equipped to do that. Yeah. And so, we're kind of really trying to target the that 200 to 500 range, church size, people who kind of have know enough to be dangerous, to just kind of help equip them, train them, give them some resources. As a pastor, I believe my role is to help equip the saints for the work of ministry. Mm-hmm. And so we want to, through Design Revival, to help equip those people who are tapped at the church to, hey, I need you to do this thing, but who want to do it well, who want to do it with excellence, who want to do it with the opportunity to kind of communicate the gospel compellingly. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to help equip people who aren't necessarily designers to know some basics about how to implement good design across all the various platforms they need to do. Okay, so those who didn't get a chance to come this year, mm-hmm. Am I a beginner, intermediate, advanced? Does it hit all? Yes, all levels can come. If you're a beginner, don't really know what you're doing, but you've got to figure out something to do, we have workshops, and just even our main session speakers give you this sort of, hopefully inspire you to kind of chase this down even further. If you're intermediate, you kind of have some skills, you want to get better, workshops will help you there as well. If you're an advanced person, the ability to communicate and share back into the church is a great thing. We're looking at some ways to maybe offer some sort of more advanced level workshops next year. We'll kind of see if we can pull like a pre-conference or something. So we're trying to figure out some ways to add even more value to the church through the conference and through workshops. So it is really open for everybody. We have people here this week who are teaching professionals of graphic design and creative arts specialists in business and corporate, down to people who's an accountant who just sort of got tapped with this thing in their church. So there's everybody, a lot of across the spectrum, and I think hopefully it's a tool and a resource that help the church across the board. So we slipped away. There's workshops going on right now. Yes. And as you guys can see, incredible space. Tell us where we're at and how you got this space. We are in the historic Springer Opera House. This is the State Theater of Georgia. It has been around since the 1800s or something. John Wilkes Booth's brother, Edwin Booth, performed on this stage back in the 1800s. It feels like this is where Lincoln was shot. I'm telling you. Right over there. It's a fantastic theater. We love this place. Just personally, my family, we're here all the time. It's a great place. But we wanted a place that would help reinforce the creativity, the arts, to help put people in a place that kind of helped spark that imagination. You kind of walk through these halls and you kind of begin to imagine things and see how things could work. And so that's kind of why we wanted to come here, why we do it at Springer. So how do I sign up for next year? Registration is open for 2020. We are excited about it. We haven't announced any of our speakers yet. We're still working through the details. If we get the guys that I'm trying to get in, it's going to be it's going to be fantastic again next year. So I'm really excited about it. Registration is open. Early bird tickets are going on sale, and they are available now through the website, designrevival.ga.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate what you're doing and what you're doing for the church, man. Hey guys, what's up? Today I welcome my friend Alan Smith. Alan is the communication arts pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Columbus, Georgia. A beard that I admire, and I can't grow any facial hair, dude. It's pretty bad.
It is a fun thing. My brother can't grow much facial. His kind of comes in patchy, so yeah. I appreciate the genetics for the beard. It's always a fun thing to have a little facial hair.
I'm in all of your facial hair. That's weird, but
thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Well, welcome, man. Thanks so much for hanging out. Appreciate your time today.
Dude, I'm super pumped to be with you. It's always nice to be able to hang out with you and just kind of talk design and talk church all at the same time. So anytime I can do that with you, it's always a blessing.
Yeah, man. So we kind of met through your conference, Design Revival. You're sporting the hat. Word.
Yep.
So it was in Columbus, Georgia. Man, I thought your conference has one of the coolest venues ever. It's the Springer Opera House, right?
Yeah.
In Columbus, Georgia. In fact, I was at hanging out with a church yesterday that had a contemporary, like a traditional church and a contemporary worship experience, but their contemporary service was in an old kind of vintage building, and they were like, can we do this? They were asking a bunch of questions. I was like, I went to the coolest conference that had the sweetest venue, and it was old and vintagey, but it was kind of an old vintage mix with modern feel. So you guys definitely have that going on.
We love the Springer. I'm telling you, it is the State Theater of Georgia. It is 1800 era building. And so it has all of that old vintage charm of a theater. And so it is just it's the kind of place that you don't have to do a whole lot of environmental work to really make for a good space. So when we were talking about Design Revival and trying to figure out venue, it's like, hey, we could do it at the church. We could do it at, this place or that place. We were like, we've just got to do it at the Springer. There's just too much about Columbus tied up in that building and in downtown area. And so, we're super excited about the Springer. We're looking forward to it again this year.
So last year was your first year. So kind of tell me how the conference got started and why you started it.
Well, we began to notice over the last several years, as we were doing some workshops and as we were doing some training for churches, it just began to be evident to us that there was a need to help churches understand how to do design better. There was a lot of opportunities for worship. There's a lot of really great conferences on communications. But just in terms of thinking about design for the church, there was a big hole there. And we began to see a lot of churches asking us, how do we do this? How do we do web? How do we do graphics? And so it just began to be the kind of thing we saw there was a need for. And so as we were doing mission trips tailored, our design and communication teams would go to mission trips around design, helping churches. And so last year was the first year we said, let's just take all of this and kind of bring people together and do a conference, bring in some really incredible speakers, and then also to provide a lot of really practical workshops so that churches can be inspired with what design can do, but also then be equipped to go back to their church on Monday after the conference and actually put some things into practice that will actually make their communications better because they're really thinking about it from a design point of view. So it was something that just became really the heart of our church to be able to really invest in other churches.
Well, man, it was a really fun conference, fun to be a part of. And what was some of the feedback or the kind of after discussion that you had from people that went last year?
The overall consensus was that they walked away with something they felt they could really put into place immediately, which was that was a priority for us. Like we could kind of go lots of main sessions and kind of talk theory or concepts. But what was really important for us was practicality. And so the numbers are somewhere in that 60 to 70% range. I can't remember off the top of my head. Of the feedback that we got was I have something applicable that I can put into practice tomorrow. Good. Whether it be how we do our print work or our web work or our design work for the slides and how we do worship. And so that was one of the biggest takeaways in terms of an encouragement for us as related to the conference, as it kind of helped us hit that mark of, are we helping churches really think about design in a compelling way? And are they actually walking away with stuff that's very usable for them? So that was one of the biggest takeaways from our feedback from people last year. We also just got a lot of things that kind of gave us some inspiration for this year. Mm-hmm. We tried to be very, I don't want to say elementary, but very entry level on our workshops last year. Yeah. And we ended up with several people that came that already had some experience. And so we're trying to add a little bit more advanced concepts and some more advanced training and workshops this year. And so just trying to make it a better experience and that people can walk away with something that they can really put into practice.
So how has COVID-19 hit you guys this year? What have you tweaked?
Well, we've been in back and forth, lots of conversation with our venue, the Springer. How do they feel about us having the conference? Are they still open? And since Georgia is kind of opening up things, we have felt very comfortable about kind of moving forward. And so working back and forth with the Springer, there are hand sanitizer stations all around. Our room is large enough that we can really spread out. Last year we had like 4 venue places where we did workshops. Mm-hmm. We're going to cut that down to 3 so that it gives us a little bit more room to spread out into some places. And so we're trying to just make things feel like there's more space. There's plenty of room for people to kind of have some distance between them. And then we've got all of the protocols in place for hand sanitizers. We'll have masks available and all those things. And so as long as things continue moving in the direction they are moving, we continue to plan on having it on the last weekend of August 28th, 29th, at the Springer here in Columbus.
So, I was going to ask you when it is and how do I make plans to go? How do I get tickets?
So the conference is August 28th and 29th. That is Friday and Saturday. The conference will actually begin at 1 o'clock. We're putting together some pre-conference workshops that are more advanced workshops. I've got a couple speakers that are coming in. One, a guy named Dax is out of Atlanta. He's going to talk about leading creative teams for your church, working on some advanced Photoshop and advanced Illustrator type classes so that we have some advanced, but that'll be in the morning on Friday. The conference will actually start at 1 o'clock on Friday. It'll go to about 6 o'clock Friday evening, and it'll be all day Saturday. People can get tickets by registering at designrevival.ga and check out our website and get a registration. We will have, and I'll let you kind of put this where in the coupon code. We'll have a coupon code for 1230 Media people that come that can get a discount on their ticket. Right now, we're still in our early bird. That will end at the end of June. But we have a coupon code that 1230 Media listeners will be able to use, and I'll give that to you so you can post in your notes and things of this nature.
So I wanted to have you on. Wanted to talk about Design Revival and what you guys do there, because I think it's important to know where we can get training and where we can have community with other people that are in our space and doing the same things that we're doing in church world. So conferences are great for that. But I also wanted to talk to you about, you've put together some points on the topic of design for your worship experience and how to design in such a way that we remove distractions. We're not distracted by crazy designs or too much design or it's just not a distraction to us. So get us into that. Give me an overview. I know this is one of your kind of values at Calvary Baptist where you are. So walk through that a little bit. Get us started here.
We kind of operate under the premise that the creative arts are a component to the worship experience. When we come into worship, the Bible kind of prescribes what a worship experience should be. It includes worship, it includes music, it includes scripture, it includes preaching. Like these are things, and the creative arts should enhance that and remove distractions. And so one of the things that drives what we do is we're always looking at all of the design elements, from parking lot and signage to interior to screens to print. Everything is looked at from the lens of, is this enhancing the worship experience, or is this adding a distraction to the worship experience? If it's enhancing it, we want to add to it. If it's distracting, we want to take away. And so those two components really drive all of the design elements that we kind of look at Calvary, to try to ask those two questions. Is it enhancing the worship experience, or is it a distraction? And then respond accordingly.
Give me an example of a distraction. What would be something that distracts me?
A distraction, this was one when I came and we started working, this was one of the first things we did. A traditional bulletin can be a huge distraction. It has lots of information that has nothing to do with the worship experience. It doesn't talk about an order of service. It doesn't have information, a place to take notes. It doesn't have an outline for you to follow as the preacher states. It's got announcements in it. That bulletin can be a distraction. And so for us, when we began to think about it from a design point of view, we said, okay, I want people to have all of the information that goes in the bulletin. I want them to know the information. But when it comes to the worship time from 11 to 12, and they come in this room, I don't want to put something in their hands that they're going to spend reading or flapping through that isn't actually enhancing the experience of worship. So we stripped our worship guide down. Like, it was stripped down. We no longer call it a bulletin because it's not a bulletin. We put that information in a different place. I don't hand that out at the service.
Where do you put it?
We put it out in the Welcome Center. We have a table, a couple places outside in the Welcome Center, so that as people leave, they can pick it up and grab that. Or if they're coming in, they could grab it, but we're not going to place it in their hands, because we want to put in their hands the things that have been designed to enhance that worship experience. And so that is a great example of what we've done. We've also kind of stripped away some of our slides, like the worship slide, like the music slides. We've gone to a very basic background in text, so that isn't drawing your attention away from what you're doing in the worship experience. So we just try to look at everything and say, is this really elevating and enhancing what's happening in that room on a Sunday morning, or is it drawing attention away from what's happening? And if it draws attention away, we get rid of it.
So one of the things that you hit on that I get really excited about is, I believe that the worship experience is the journey that you take your audience on from parking lot to parking lot.
Absolutely.
Or if it's an online experience, it's when they come to your website, as soon as they click on to as soon as they click off.
Absolutely.
Everything in those two, in that boundary, is your worship experience. It's not just,
absolutely,
that 30 minutes of worship set and message. That's not it, because the experience goes from when you get out of your car, because sometimes when you get out of your car and you have a terrible experience getting in, that's the first impression.
That's right.
That you get. So, first impression to the church is thrown off.
Yeah.
So you hit on signage, you hit on, the announcement slides and worship slides and things like that. So maybe talk at that for a second. Do you believe that it's it's the journey from parking lot to parking lot?
You never get a chance to make a second impression, right? I mean, a first impression. And so people's interaction with your brand, your church, starts from phone calls to web searches to social media searches to parking lot to exterior signage. Like, what does the sign look like when people pull into your parking lot? Like, is that well manicured? Is it designed well? Does it look good? Is it visually interesting? It tells an awful lot about what they can expect on the inside of that building if the outside signage doesn't look good. And so every part of that is communicating something about what's important to your church and what's important to what you're doing. And so you can't let any part of it go, well, that's not really important. It is super important. Here's an example. I like barbecue. I really love a good barbecue. But when I go to a barbecue joint and I pull up to that barbecue joint and it's a really nice building and it's really clean and really beautiful looking, I go, they don't have good barbecue. Like, when I pull up to a barbecue joint, I expect that to look like a shack. I expect it to kind of look like if you push on it real hard, it may fall over. That's a good barbecue joint, right? The exterior, the whole part of it tells you about what you're going to get on the inside. And that is absolutely true when you come up to your church. If you don't think about the design, the presentation from beginning to end, I think you're missing out on a whole lot of design opportunities.
Good. All right, so let's dive into kind of some elements, some specific things that you would say, these are things that will remove the distraction from our worship experience, okay? So let me ask you this first. Where are graphics in worship going to live? Obviously, we talked about signage, but maybe screen, maybe printed pieces, things like that. So when we're talking about, as we talk through these elements to enhance your graphics and design for worship, tell me where my graphics are going to live. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we go through these processes depending on the project, right? But as a general of thumb, these graphic design elements happen beginning at your sign leading on campus. If you have any A-frames for directional purposes, that plays a part. If you have little vests that your people in your parking lot are wearing to kind of not get run over, that has to be designed well with good graphics and pieces in it. If you're navigating your wayfinding points around campus to get from point A to point B, how do I get to the nursery? Like if you got families with children, they need to be able to find the nursery on their own. It needs to be so crystal clear, and that is a design thought process, right? And so those graphics need to be clear. It needs to be understood. I need to be able to tell people where to go. When I walk into the welcome center or the lobby of my church, the things that I have sitting around, they say things, they communicate, and those. So everything comes into play when we talk about design. I don't think there's an element, whether it be even touching on the interior design, are these colors good? Should we paint? I think all of these things, but from a graphical point of view, anything that is printed, anything that is digital, there needs to be some very intentional design think happening on that, and it just shouldn't just be thrown up without some real design to it.
So your first idea is to edit.
Edit.
What do you mean by that?
I usually tell, like, we have our graphics ninja. She's fantastic. We'll talk through process and we'll put something together. I'm like, let's keep taking stuff away until it breaks, and then let's put something back. Right? What is necessary and what is unnecessary? Edit. Like, take things away, because the tendency here's a tendency for novice and amateur designers is they put too much information in their graphics. They put too much information in their announcement slide that's going on the screen. It's got everything in it, and then you don't know. So the person who's looking at it doesn't know who it's for. They've tried to read all of this stuff in just a few seconds, and it becomes a distraction, which is one of our faux pas. We don't add distractions. We remove distractions. So the thing I talk about all the time is edit, take stuff away until it breaks, and then put it back together. So we try, like on announcement slides, for example, we try to only have 3 elements on that graphic, right? Big, middle, small, and then we direct everybody on that small print is to the website where they can get all the other information. Or we'll direct them to the Welcome Center where there's a flyer or a brochure with all of the extra stuff. So we just try to whittle away, edit, take stuff away, keep removing things until you get something that can stand on its own without being a distraction.
So that's a good point. So a lot of times with announcement graphics and things like that, I see the same thing, even down to like, here are 5 email addresses to people that you can contact to sign up for men's conference.
That's right.
When you can easily send them to, calvarybaptist.com/men. That's
correct.
And all the information is over there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good point. All right. So that leads us into less is more.
That's right.
We talked about that a little bit, but why is it more effective to put less on graphics than more?
Because it becomes a huge distraction. If you've seen, I've looked back at some of our old announcement slides before I came on, and it was like just this splattering of stuff. It's got graphics and overlays and textures, and then it's got all these fonts and 3 or 4 different fonts on it. All of these things compete for your attention. And so why less is more is because the message can come through. So if I take things away that begin to distract from the message, I can clearly communicate what I'm trying to say. And that ultimately is the objective for design, right? That's one of the distinguishing characteristics between art and design. It has to communicate. And if it can't communicate because it's too cluttered, you need to take some stuff away. Less is more. So like what we try to do, like with graphic, like announcement slides in the worship experience, I want something on it that clearly identifies who this is intended for: women's ministry, men's ministry, youth ministry, something that clearly lets the person know, oh, that's for me. And then I give them enough information that lets them know not all the W's, the who, what, when, where, whys, but enough information to let them know this is not only for you, but you ought to really look at this. And then I tell them where to go get the information, right? And we just try to do less is more, because when you remove those other elements, it makes it cleaner, it's easier to read, and it just communicates more clearly.
What about readable fonts, and how do you limit the number of fonts that you use on a graphic?
There are differing philosophies on this, so I'll just tell you mine and how I operate. We have 2 fonts that we have, quote, approved for use on any of our graphic work. We just use 2. We don't try to get 17 or 18. We've selected 2. They're clean. They're easy to read. They work really well if they're big. They work really well if they're small. They have a nice boldness to them. Now, within that, you have bolds and thins and all these different sort of layers to it that you can have. But we have 2 basic fonts that we use.
What are they?
And Gotham and brain cramp.
I got you.
Yes, you did. Museo Sans. I'm sorry, there it is. Okay. Gotham and Museo Sans. All right, so Gotham is a nice sans serif that's just a nice, clean art, just really good. And the Museo has slabs on it, so they're nice and heavy. Those are the 2. Now, you can have it Gotham with lights and mediums and book and all these, but just have 2 fonts. That's all we use. And what it does is it allows all of our stuff to have a consistency. So if it's a sign or something that's printed, or it's something in the church, in the screens, if it's the sermon notes, if it's whatever, there's a consistency now to what we're doing. And so we've tried, here's one of the things we did to test this stuff out too, is we put a couple different slides together with a couple different fonts, and that we really liked, that we thought really looked well, and we put them on the screens, and we asked several of our senior adults, which of these can you read better? Right? We want to enhance the worship experience. A distraction is, I can't read that font. So we narrowed it down to a handful that we really liked, that we thought we could work in a lot of different applications. And then we ask our senior adults, which of these can you read better? Because whichever one they selected, we liked, we thought would work with our stuff. But what it did is it ensured that we were not adding a distraction to our senior adults who are coming to church and they can't read this. We did the same thing for like our music slides. We did the same thing with font sizes. So we did a slide that had different sizes of font, and we were like, which one can you read well?
How did you do that? When did you do the survey, and walk me through how you did that?
So we just created a couple slides, right? When they put them together in ProPresenter, they had a couple slides. And after the service one day, I grabbed a couple of our senior adults who we have a wonderful relationship with. I say, hey, I need your opinion on something real quick. And then I talked to the person in the booth. Give me slide 1, 2, and 3. And then it wasn't like some big thing. It was after church one day. I already had it set up. I just asked them for their opinion. And it has made all the difference, because it now is fonts that we like. We think they work well in lots of applications, but they can read it, which I've removed that distraction. Because what we were hearing some of our senior adults like, I can't read that. I don't know what that says, and which means I can't sing along. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a problem. I have just introduced a distraction to our service, and I've got to fix it. And so that was a way we try to attack that.
Good. Tell me about letting a design breathe. What is the importance of white space?
White space, man. Letting it breathe allows your eye. Okay, so when you have lots of things on the screen or on the paper or on this little graphic or on this social media post, your eye is trying to figure out, what do I go to? Like, what is the important part that I'm supposed to land on? And when we give it plenty of room, it allows the eye to land more easily on the important things. And so it's easy to kind of fill up every space. But when we allow it to breathe, when we give it plenty of room, plenty of white space, plenty of negative space, it allows the eye to land on the copy or on the graphic or on the image or on the text a lot more quickly, and it communicates more easily. So that negative space, that breathing room is important. And I think that is, to me, that is one of the telltale signs of a beginner, inexperienced designers. They feel they got to put everything together, and they put it all the way out to the edge, and they have no margins or no padding. And it really, your eyes struggle trying to figure out what they're looking at or what's important. And so having that breathing room, having a hierarchy, really helps that wait till it's easier on the eye. It just makes your eye be able to land and look at things more clearly and more easily, quickly.
Is there a trend to put text like right on the edge of the margin? Is that a trend, or is that just a novice kind of thing that I've seen lately?
I have seen that trending. I've been, as you look through, I look through Dribbble and Behance a lot to see kind of what are some things that are happening. And there is a trend of, there's something that's happening. People are pushing everything to a side.
Yeah.
Right. And they'll be, I don't particularly, I like to have a little breathing room, but they're pushing things to the left margin or the right margin. And then they do these thin lines. So there is, and I see that on social media too. Not sure if I like it personally, because I think it makes it hard to read. Yeah. But there seems to be a tendency, people pushing stuff to a margin and filling all the way out to the edge. And I just think that makes it harder to read.
So I come from like a TV background. I started my career editing a TV show, and in the broadcast world, there's what's called title safe.
Yep.
Where it's if you're making a video, you get all your text in title safe, and that came from you didn't know if it was going to air on a 16:9 TV or a 4:3 TV back in the day. Show them age. And so you get it in title safe to make sure that it's in this one, and it's in this one, and it's in this one, and your text is in all TVs. Yeah. So maybe I'm old school in that, because I kind of feel that in design world as well. I'm like, put it in title safe. What are you talking about? I mean, like, the title safe.
Yeah. I'm with you. That's where I got my start too, is editing shows for network and title safe and making sure everything was in the proper margins. And then as I started doing design, that was a natural thing too, keep things. Yeah. And then I also have done I do a lot of web design. And so you've got padding and margin factors that come into play because of platforms. And so from a design point of view, I'm always thinking, I need to have some margin. I need to have some breathing room. Mm-hmm. But as I also just think about it from just a design point of view, the purpose for design is to communicate, right? I'm trying to communicate information visually. Mm-hmm. And if I have things that are too tight, then it becomes difficult to pick out the important pieces of information. And so that white space, that margin, that padding, that negative space, whatever sort of how you want to look at it, I think provides that. And I think it's an important component to really good design, especially in the worship experience, when I'm trying to communicate the gospel and make sure that what happens in that room is really enhancing that experience. I don't want people to struggle trying to figure out what I'm trying to say, or figure out what's important, or get lost in the design.
So I'll kind of land this topic this way too, in that, like, some churches, you haven't replaced, this might sound weird, but you haven't replaced your lobby TVs in a while. Mm-hmm. So, like, for instance, if you put something on screen, it might look good in the room, but if you're broadcasting it in other places on other TVs, you need to make sure that the text isn't cut off on those other places as well. So I think adding some margin, or even like a printed piece, you don't know how your machine is going to cut it. So adding some margin allows you to make sure that the visible text is not cut off in different places. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that's part of the design think process. Like, where is this? okay, I've just created this little widget, right? This little thing. Where are all of the places it's going to live? Right. And it's going to live on the screen. It's going to be printed in a bulletin. It's going to show up on the web. It's going to show up on social media. It's going to show up on my announcement, my little TVs all around campus or all around the church. And how is it going to look in those environments? And part of what is one of the things that's important in designing these things well is thinking about that, all of the various applications, and making sure that you don't design something that's got a really neat element that gets chopped off because your screen cuts it off or your printer knocks it off, or so you just have to think through all of those different layers to make sure things are going to look correct in each of these different applications.
So as we close today, you mentioned Dribbble, you mentioned Behance. Where are some other places that you get inspiration? Where are some places that you look?
For inspiration on design, I spend a lot of time on both of those sites, and I spend a lot of time on a lot of Facebook groups that I'm a part of, church communication Facebook groups, because I find a lot of design trends I see happening first in like Dribbble and Behance, right? Because those are not necessarily church designers. These are guys that are designing for big companies, and you start seeing trends taking place. And I like being on the trend side of things and not on the trailing side of things. And then there's a lot of really great Facebook groups that have incredible designers that really kind of are valuable ways to kind of get inspiration and kind of be inspired. And so I usually go to those three basic platforms right now is where I'm spending a lot of my time looking for inspiration. I also spend time, I subscribe to Skillshare because there's always something on there that's kind of interesting and to train through. And there are a lot of really good designers on there that I just look through their work and kind of like, that is really interesting. And just try to see how that may work in a church or a worship experience environment, and try to recreate or look at how the techniques that they offer. But that's kind of where I go right now for inspiration.
I like that approach. So when I was I know I've told this story before, but when I was on staff at New Spring, we did not look, a lot of churches look to the elevations, the church on the moves, those churches like that. New Spring was one of those. But at New Spring, when I was on staff there, we did not look at other churches for trends and things like that. We would go for, like, Bruno Mars is in concert in Columbia or in South Carolina somewhere. Let's go see the concert.
Yeah.
And we would not just go to enjoy the music, but we would go to analyze and watch and, look at their lighting and look at that. Not that we need to bring the secular world into church world all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying, though, that look at other things besides church world to see where design trends are going and things like that.
Absolutely.
Sit down and watch TV and watch the commercials. I've said this before too. Like, I'll be watching football at Thanksgiving and I'll watch a lower third. I'm like, run that back. I need to see how that. Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
I don't care about the play. Just the runner. I want to look
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that.
No, dude. But the downside of that is you're ruined for life. Because you're like, I go to movies knowing that I'm going to hate the movie, but knowing that they did something cool that I'm
yes.
like, don't stop the credits. I want to watch the credits. Okay?
I want to see how they're putting these together. No, absolutely. Because you learn something new. You pick up. I don't know if this will offend anybody, but I'll say it anyway. I think that generally speaking, the church tends to be 10 or 12 years behind trend. I mean, it just takes a while for the church as a whole to kind of catch up to what are sort of current trends in design. And all of a sudden for the church, it becomes novel. Like, this is a really cool idea. And the design community are like, man, we were doing that. We're doing that 10 years ago. I don't know why. And so for us, I want to be looking at what are the current, and here's why that's important to me. It speaks to relevancy.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm creating things that can sit alongside the current trend, then I feel as though the design elements are going to resonate with those people that come into the room and engage in worship. They're going to feel that it is relevant to them. They've seen this style in their life, and they come here and they see this style, it's relevant to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we don't think about what are current trends, not trendy, I don't like trendy, there's a difference, right? I want to follow the trend line, but I don't want to be trendy. Like I don't want all of a sudden to have like that carpet. What's that really fluffy carpet that was a trend in the 70s, shag carpet. I don't want shag carpet all over the place. I don't want avocado green filling everything. I don't want to be trendy, but I do want to follow the trends. Like what are some things that we're seeing, because it makes sure that your content stays relevant to this community. And the goal as a creative artist, the goal is to make sure that the things that we create communicate the gospel clearly, enhance the worship experience, remove distractions. And if we aren't being relevant, it's a distraction. I mean, if I show up in a worship experience and everything looked like it's like 2002,
Speaking of which, there's this really cool font that you can use for ancient and old VBS. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
Papyrus.
Papyrus, yes.
Papyrus. I think that's the name of it.
Yes.
I think it's the name of it.
It has a very ancient Egyptian feel to it.
It's used great for like kids VBS when you're. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I'm familiar with it. I have. Yeah. That's new, isn't it? That's fairly new.
Brand new. I just saw it come out.
I'm very intrigued. If we could find something that was a script like that had a little humor element to it,
yeah,
that could go a long way as well, I believe.
It would. Oh boy.
We have a list. Our graphic designer put together a little list of about 8 or 10 fonts that are banned.
Yeah, never.
They're just stuck all over the place. It's fun.
It's funny. We still pick on it, but I still see Papyrus. I still see Comic Sans.
I do too.
I'm like, please stop.
We were doing a church outing one and all the pastors were in the vehicle we were going, and we were driving into the small little rural Georgia town, and their entire sign, "Welcome to," was all papyrus. I went, whoa. I was like, are you serious? I mean, this beautiful sign, wood, graved, it was awesome, but it was all papyrus. I was like,
we'll have to show in this podcast. We'll have to show the YouTube clip of is it Ryan
yes,
Gosling? With
I know what you did. Oh yes, that's a great clip.
Yeah, exactly. All right, last question for you. If I'm a designer, a new designer, how do I know what's good and what's not? Like, how do I develop my spidey sense to know that Papyrus is old news, Comic Sans is old news, don't use that, and that what looks good and what doesn't look good? How do you develop your spidey sense for design?
I think the development of that comes with two things. One, you need to create stuff, a lot of stuff, get it out, and let people critique it. And don't be afraid when people go, what were you thinking, dude? That's not really good. Like, you need to make stuff, create stuff, and get it out and let people give you input. And second, you need to look for and find current, relevant, good quality designers that are creating lots of work and just deconstruct what they're doing. Like, break it down, tear it apart, and look for the concepts. Like, what are the design techniques they're using? Like one of the things I tend to do is I'll find something like there's a designer that I really like his work. I follow his stuff. His name is Aaron Draplin. He's out of the Seattle area. He's not a Christian. If you find his stuff and you listen to him, he's got a mouth on him, but his design is incredible. And so I'll take some of his designs sometimes, I'll prop them on my computer, and then I will make them black and white, right? So now I'm not worried about color issues, and I'll just start breaking them apart. Like, because he has these really thick lines and does these really, really unique designs. And I just begin to deconstruct it. I kind of take it apart. And then I try to go, okay, I think I understand what he's done. Let me go see if I can create something that is similar, but that's different. Like, it needs to be your own thing, but that has these elements in it. Let me see if I can take a couple of these elements and put it into this design and see. And so what I'm doing in that process is I'm learning techniques that he has done to incorporate into designs that I'm creating.
Correct.
And so I think if you do those two things, you get better at learning what are good design and bad design. create stuff, put it out, let people critique it, and then find really good designers and deconstruct their work.
Good. I think a recent example of that might be like the Pixel Streak, which is
Yes.
a little bit maybe a couple years ago, but where you take a foot or something and stretch it, and wrap it around and things like that. So yeah, if you see designers use stuff like that, don't like straight copy them or steal from them, but yeah, pull in and deconstruct their elements. That's so good, man.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
All right, so before I leave you, tell me about Design Revival again. How can I sign up? How's it going to go down this year?
Design Revival is August the 28th and 29th. It is here in Columbus, Georgia at the Springer Opera House. You can get tickets if you go to designrevival.ga, and you can go ahead and get tickets. We're currently still in our early bird ticket pricing. 1230 Media will have a coupon code when they publish this on their website that you can actually use that coupon code and get an additional discount off your ticket. We're excited about it. Have some really good designers who are going to be our main session speakers. We're working on a variety. We should have about 12 different workshops that people would have the ability to pick from during those 2 days. We're going to record all of this content. It'll be available after the conference. We're developing a platform called the Congregation. And that Congregation platform will be a access to all of our digital content. So last year's conference will be available on there. This year's conference will be available on there. And throughout the course of the year, we do some online workshops with various other designers. All of that content will be on there as well. So we're hoping to be able to release that platform at this year's conference called the Congregation. And so it's just, we just want to encourage people to come be a part of it. And, join us in August in Columbus. It'll be nice and hot.
Yes.
So join us.
Yeah. Hopefully no Corona. Hopefully.
That's what we're praying for, man. I'll tell you, we're working on a plan B. If things sort of go crazy in July and it kind of looks like we can't do this live, we are working on, and we have a plan B in place, or at least it's almost in place, to kind of do it at just a digital platform if we have to. But we're very comfortable and very confident at this point that we'll be able to do it live in Columbus.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, man. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Carl,
it.
man. It's always good talking to you, brother.
Hey guys, I wanted to let you know about a change that has happened since Alan and I recorded the interview that you just saw. Design Revival has moved to a virtual event. They were hoping for a physical event this year, but with COVID, it just is not possible. So they have moved to a virtual event. They're actually expanding the event to include more speakers online. So it's going to be a great event for you and your team this year. Our team at 1230 is going to be teaching workshops for the event online. Also, some great speakers are lined up, so you still don't want to miss it. As you can see, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, we just want to show you some clips of last year's event. Great speakers, great workshops, great teaching from designers and communicators in the faith space. And I want to encourage you to support guys like Alan, who are leading conferences to help you win at your church. You can still get tickets for this year's event as it moves to an online-only event. Just go to designrevival.ga to learn more. designrevival.ga.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Well, hey guys, thanks so much for listening and watching this week. I want to thank Eric Goss and the team at Minnow for sponsoring our show this week. Be sure to check out their weekly Church at Home series for kids. Great for virtual kids worship experiences. Just go to gominnow.com. You'll see a Church at Home Learn More button in the top right corner of your browser window to check out the latest episode and also view past episodes completely free. Just go to gominnow.com to check those guys out. Next week on the show, I'll welcome the CEO of Minnow, Eric Goss, to the show. Eric is a former Amazon marketing executive. He served right under Jeff Bezos, and he played a key role in the introduction of Amazon's first ebook and print-on-demand business. So I'm really excited to talk to Eric. I'll be talking to Eric about how you can make Sunday happen virtually for your kids and families at your church. That's next week. Go out there and create some incredible worship experiences this weekend at your church. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit MakingSundayHappen.com.